This is Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, an in-depth interview with Alabama's top political newsmakers. Now, from the studios of Troy University, here is Steve Flowers.
I'm Steve Flowers, and welcome to Alabama Politics. Folks, we're fortunate tonight to have as our guest a veteran of Alabama government and Alabama Montgomery business, a Montgomery businessman, and the leading candidate for Congress on the Republican side for the new congressional district. Before I go in there and talk about Dick Brewbaker, who's my guest, I'm going to tell y'all our district line here in the 2nd District has changed dramatically. I've been trying to tell a lot of civic clubs in this area of the state about how much it's changed and sort of what it looks like. But it's a changed district, and it stemmed from the fact that some plaintiffs, Democratic plaintiffs, wanted to have what they thought would be a Democratic district, and I think they've created a swing district. To be one of the most contentious congressional districts in the country. It's 50% white Republican, 50% black Democrat, and it's right here at Montgomery. The one thing about for me Montgomeryans is your county is intact for the first time in 3 or 4 decades. So it's drawn really for a Montgomery candidate, I think, because there's still a friends and neighbors politics that goes on in the state. And I don't think Montgomery could have a better known candidate than Dick Brewbaker. Dick, good to have you on the show.
Well, I appreciate you letting me come. I've been looking forward to it.
Dick used to do the show a lot when he was in the legislature, and he'd born and raised here in Montgomery, has deep roots here. Dick, how many years did you serve in the House and Senate?
I served 12 years in the legislature and another 6 or 8 being on governor's staffs and things like that. But all in all, I've got about 20 years in Alabama politics, but only 12 of them in the legislature.
What years were you in the House and the Senate?
Oh, gosh.
We've been back
let's see,
2000.
I got elected to the Senate in 2010, so I would have, about 2002, served 1 term in the House, got out for a while, and then got elected to the Senate in 2010 when Larry Dixon retired.
You had actually worked for Governor Fob James
Yes.
from 98 to 2002.
I did.
As an education specialist.
I was his education liaison and was responsible for pushing the governor's education legislation in the legislature, and also I had the privilege of dealing with the State Board of Education, which was an adventure back in those days.
Dick, you're an educator by profession.
I taught.
You
before
taught
I got into
school.
car business.
When
I
people
sure
say,
did.
"What is your profession?" It's car dealer / educator.
Yep.
So you've had the. Let me ask you this though. Go back to your childhood. Your family has owned that Brewbaker Motors. I know y'all sold it recently, but still has the name Brewbaker Motors. What year was it? Your great grandfather?
No, well, my grandfather bought it from Hugh Adams in 1939, and because of Lend-Lease, they weren't building any new cars, and it was a Buick, Ajax, and Nash dealership.
Ajax cars.
Yeah, Ajax.
I never even heard of Ajax cars.
Neither have I, but
I'd heard of Nash. Remember a Nash.
Nash Ramblers.
I remember the Nash.
And
so he bought it in 39.
And he didn't have to pay much for it.
Well, there weren't many cars at that time.
Well,
were there?
and they weren't building any new ones because they'd switched over to war production by 1939. So he figured when the war came, if you got drafted and got killed in the war, it wouldn't matter to him what the place was worth. If he came back and they didn't, and Nash and Ajax and Buick had all gone out of business permanently, he would have had a pretty good repair shop that he had probably paid too much for. Or best of all, maybe one of the new car franchises would make it back. And the only one that came back after World War II was Buick. And we handled Buick for the next 63 years.
I bought a Buick from y'all one time back.
Yeah.
And the one thing I'll say is I had excellent service from that Buick. Y'all's people, and I've told people this whenever they say that Brewbaker's name is known, I said not just from politics, but from the car dealership. You've got almost universal name ID in Montgomery.
Well, in the Montgomery market area, I do.
Yeah.
And that matters, though.
It does.
I tell you, you don't stay in business from 1939 to 2022 by cheating people.
That's exactly what I was told people. I says, I've always heard that they were very honest and they did me right and they've done everybody right. They're good. Y'all have good service.
Yep. Well, that's if you're going to stay long term, that's the only way in the car business to stay in.
Repeat business.
Oh, absolutely.
So go back to your granddad. Did you know him?
Yeah.
What was his name?
W.S. Brewbaker, William S. Brewbaker.
It was named the W.S. Brewbaker, if you remember.
Right. My father was W.S. Brewbaker Jr., My brother, who is now the dean of the Alabama Law School, is
Okay.
the smarter of the two Brewbaker boys, is W.S. Brewbaker III, and I've got a son.
And you named him W.S. Brewbaker.
Yes, my son. That he goes by.
Okay.
He is William McCall Brewbaker, but he's still William Brewbaker. So he's not a fourth.
So your grandfather, W.S. Baker, I remember the
Brewbaker,
name.
yeah.
I can see the sign now. W.S. Brewbaker Motor Company. And then your daddy ran it for all the time you were growing up. You grew
Yes,
up,
he did.
So you grew up in that motor company.
I did, and when I went away to school to Vanderbilt, and then I started teaching school. And I kept teaching school, and I taught full time for 3 years, and I taught part time for probably the next 10 at private schools or substitute teaching where they were short, because I like
What'd you
dealing
teach?
with students.
So-
I taught classics and U.S. history, classical history and U.S. history, and I coached wrestling at Georgia Washington for 6 or 7 years.
Is that,
yeah, with
did
Butch
you wrestle,
Norris.
Did
yeah.
you wrestle in high school?
No. I learned on the job.
They were private schools when you were coming along.
Yep.
Like I'm only a few years older than you, and so there were no private. Montgomery Academy, I don't think it started, but people like Jeff Kahn, all of them were my age. Jeff Blitz,
I think it.
Blitz, and then with Lanier. Ham Wilson.
MA was founded in 1959.
Okay, so it was in existence, but I think most of the guys I knew went to Lanier.
Right. Well, my dad went to Lanier. At the time, for a long time, people talk about how Loveless Academy is one of the best high schools in the United States.
Right.
Well, Lanier High School was ranked in the top 3 or 4 high schools in the United States for a decade. I mean, there was a time there where Sidney Lanier was one of the best high schools in the United States.
Well, let me tell you something, Dick Brewbaker. When I was growing up, they weren't just good academically, but Lanier and Lee dominated high school football
Well,
and
Bart
basketball.
Starr played football at Lanier.
Oh
didn't
God,
he?
I'm gonna tell you that it was like they would play the regular season, and Crampton Bowl would be sold out starting in September for the ball game, and then they would dispose of all the Birmingham 6A schools and 4A schools 40-0, and they wound up playing each other for state championship. Did that in football, basketball, and track. But I think it fell off when Jeff Davis started. I think Montgomery had too many students compared to the Birmingham schools. I don't know what made Montgomery such a good athletic town.
Well, it was for a long time.
Do you remember that?
No, because by the time I was old enough to pay attention to football,
Are you even 60 years old yet?
I am 62.
Okay.
I'm born in 1961.
Well, you're not much younger than me, but you ought to remember that stuff somewhat. Because that
Well,
was.
I remember the Lee Lanier game being a big deal, but I don't ever really remember high school football without Jeff Davis being part of the conversation.
They came in.
Billy Livens was coaching.
He was
Jeff
good.
Davis,
They had good coaches. What it was.
Yes, he was a great coach.
When I would ask them, I've had John Ed Mathis on this show, and he of course been around it a long time. I said, what do you think made those teams so good? He says it was the coaching.
No, sure.
He was convinced that he was a really star athlete at Huntington.
Who?
John Ed Mathis.
I did not know that.
He was a super tennis player and basketball player.
I knew about the tennis. I didn't know about the basketball.
He was good in basketball. When I write something about him, they talk about his daddy. His daddy was a real famous Methodist minister. But back to you growing up. So you grew up in the motor company.
Yep.
And went off to Vanderbilt. Now, did you marry a girl that you met at Vanderbilt?
No. I married Ruth Weibel. Her father and mother still live in Montgomery. When she was growing up, he had a dairy farm right where Sturbridge is in Montgomery right now.
That's right there.
So but we got married in 1989. She got her undergraduate degree from Belhaven University in Mississippi and got her master's from Auburn. And we got married in 1989, got 5 boys.
You've got 5
5
sons.
boys and 5 grandchildren.
Are any of them here?
I am very fortunate in that I have 3 of them here. I have one of my sons, Mac, has his own welding and fabrication company.
Here in Montgomery?
Here in Montgomery. And
Is it named Brewbaker?
yes, Mac Brewbaker. And my youngest son is a junior at the university, so he'll home every holiday. And my son, Ben Brewbaker, he's can't walk. He's in a wheelchair, and he's at home. So I'm very fortunate to have 3 of my sons still around. My oldest boy is a member of the 75th Ranger Regiment and is at Fort Benning. He has loved the Army and been in for a long time now. I mean, I think he's been to Afghanistan 3 times. He was there when Kabul fell, when all that fiasco happened. And my number 2 son, Tom, is a big deal in the fishing industry. He's vice president of marketing for Strike King Fishing, and they're based out of South Carolina.
Now you live out at Pike Road now, don't you?
I do.
But you grew up. What part of Montgomery did you grow up in?
I grew up on Midfield Drive and on Allendale.
And McGee Estates. Is that
Yeah, exactly.
But now, Dick, let me ask you this question. So did you go linear or did you go to private school?
I went to Bear for elementary and then transferred to Montgomery Academy.
But now let me ask you, your family's been involved with education. There's a school named Brewbaker.
Right, after my grandmother. She was a public school teacher, taught for, I don't know how
W.S.
many years.
Brewbaker's wife.
Right.
The original founder.
Castellito Brewbaker. And and he donated not too long after she died, gave the school board that property where the Brewbaker Magnet and Brewbaker High, Brewtech and Brewbaker Elementary, Middle, and High School, all that property. He gave them that, so on the condition they name a school after her. And
so it's named after your grandmama then?
I think he gave them the land for the bus depot that's out on Troy Highway too. I'm not sure.
So that. I've always known there was a Brubeck school,
Yep.
but it's not. It's a tech school. Is that right?
Well, no. It's a technology magnet, and the things those kids are doing out there is, it's come a long way teaching kids how to use computers and engineering type technology. It's one of the STEM centers for Montgomery County.
So wonder you didn't ever teach there. That'd been good to go to Dick Brewbaker teaching your grandmama school.
Yeah, I don't know whether it would have been good or not, but I tell you,
you like being in the car business.
I tell you, I liked being a school teacher. I like, one thing about middle schoolers, they're never just slinging hash. Every day there's something big that's going to happen and change their lives. At least that's the way they think. And
did you major in education at Vanderbilt?
I majored in history and economics and picked up enough hours in the summer times and as a minor to get a teacher certificate and I was glad I did it because I didn't want to go right into the car business. I wanted to do something else for at least a little while.
Your brother never even entertained that he would just be a lawyer.
No, he's been either practicing law or teaching law since he graduated from law school.
Now, is he older or younger than you?
He's older than I am. He was with Balch and Bingham for a few years and then went and got his LLM and has been a law professor ever since. And now he's the dean of the Alabama Law School. I'm very proud of my brother.
Dick, let's go back to that congressional race a little bit. What we got, folks, we got a brand new congressional district. It ain't the second district y'all have known all these years of Montgomery through the Wiregrass. It is Montgomery to Mobile. And in order to try to design a Democratic district, which I think they're already putting on the board in Washington, that it leans Democratic. The one thing that really resonated with me was when the special master who drew the district lines, he put a map or some kind of chart with that map and said in 16 out of 17 of the last elections, a Democrat would have won this congressional seat. Now, the reason I think that a Republican, and you particularly, have a good chance to win that seat for the Republicans, I think you are a better candidate than, say, Moore would have been, even the incumbent.
Well,
because I still believe Montgomery to me is an overgrown small town. People know each other. You got people who will vote for you because they watched you grow up. They went to church with you. They wrestle with you. They know who you are, and they know you know Montgomery. But now the Democratic primary is different because if you look at the Democratic votes in that Democratic primary on March 5th, a good bit of that vote's in Mobile.
Well, and not only that, of the Democrats, the 13 Democrats, not only do the real front-running contenders, none of them live in Montgomery, and they don't even live in the second district.
I know it.
The apparent front-runner on the Democrat side is a state legislator from Huntsville.
I know it.
And I hope that at least some traditional Democrat voters would rather have a Republican that they know than a guy who's actually going to give Huntsville 2 congressmen once he gets elected. I mean, being where you're from matters.
It does. It makes a difference as Democrat or Republican voters because I've had Kurt Hatcher on this show before, and when Stephen Reed ran for mayor of Montgomery, I have him on every year. When he was running, I'm on Channel 8 here in Montgomery, and they asked me to predict those races. I said, Stephen Reed and J.C. Love are going to do much better than you think they are because they're from here.
That's exactly right.
There's a friends and neighbors politics. They've watched y'all grow up. They've watched you go to church. I mean, the people your granddaddy's done us a favor for.
Sure.
You got old guys sitting over there in Cloverdale that'll say, well, you know, I like that Brewbaker family. They were really treating me right about my car.
Well, also, the importance of where you're from in this congressional race, it's no secret how hard the mayor tried to get a prominent Montgomery politician to run for Congress, because it's going to matter for Montgomery who wins that race. And I'm not sure why Senator Hatcher decided not to run for Congress. Well, I do know. Being a state senator is a pretty good gig. And
Especially being from Montgomery.
He can run his Head Start program,
Exactly.
make $60,000 or thereabouts from the legislature, and do okay, and not have to move his family to D.C. So I think that's probably why. But you know, Montgomery will be in kind of an odd position if somebody, especially if someone who doesn't even live in the district, ends up being the congressman.
It is. Let me tell you why. One thing that's important to me for us to have somebody who knows and understands Montgomery. This really is a Montgomery district. It's designed, I mean, all the Montgomerys are together. But I go back to harken back to an interview I had with Todd Strange when he was mayor of Montgomery. And I was sitting right here where we're sitting. He was sitting there where you are. And it was a downturn in the economy. And I, being from Troy and one of the peripheral towns around Montgomery, you know, we know Montgomery well because we kind of almost part of Montgomery. Montgomery, Troy and Greenville and Eufaula and different towns are almost like part of Montgomery. A lot of your customers came from there. Anyway, the bottom line is I was sitting there and telling Todd Strange, the state, even the state government was cutting back. I assumed all my life that the state government was the biggest employer in Montgomery. And I said, well, I know you're sorry about that. He said, Steve, and I said that to him. I said, that's y'all's biggest employer. He said, Steve, that's not our biggest employer. I said, oh, is Hyundai bigger now? He says, no, it's Maxwell Gunner.
Yeah.
Maxwell Gunner, that's why you need a Montgomery you need a Montgomery congressman. Somebody who's from Mobile, they're going to be more interested in that Docks or Austell or something.
Well, and there's no reason you can't be interested in both, but one person can only, you can only ride one horse at a time, as my grandfather used to say. And, you know, Austell's very important, but it's only North Mobile that's in the district, not where the docks are. But for Montgomery, if something, you know, there's a lot of concern in the community about the way the Air Force views Montgomery right now because of the schools.
Right.
And as you know, last year they shut down the NCO Academy. They
did not know that, huh?
Well, they did. And, you know, so we have Montgomery, whether it's the mayor or whether it's our congressional representatives, we have got to do everything we can to make sure the United States Air Force knows how much we value them and that we're willing to play ball to do whatever it takes to maintain Montgomery's reputation as a friendly city to the military.
Well,
and, you know, my son's stationed in Columbus. You wouldn't believe the things that town does to make sure people at Fort Moore are happy, and the things they do for soldiers. And I think Montgomery's going to really have to concentrate on that if they want to keep that back.
I think that's your goal as a congressman. I think that you got to get on armed services, and you got to get on the look after the armed services. Even more so than the old district, I think there was never a district that was cut out more for being on armed services and ag. But you cut that wiregrass. See, you cut Rucker out, but you've got still Maxwell Gunner would be the most important thing for that congressperson.
You know, and I think that it says a lot that a lot of people were very encouraged to see the F-35s come to Montgomery.
Right.
But you'll notice they didn't go to Maxwell. They're over at Danley at the Guard Center.
Oh.
And so I'd always thought that on those very advanced planes that the Air Force and the Air National Guard would get together and put those at Maxwell where they'd be, and that would be good for the base. It would be giving them a flying mission, which they don't have right now. But whoever the congressman is, is going to have to concentrate on keeping the military, the Air Force happy, because we can't afford to have Maxwell just be shut down one mission at a time. And it's, it's a college. It's the military school.
Right.
And that's great in the sense that it brings a lot of new people into Montgomery every year. But it'd also be very easy for the Air Force to move their college. It's not like they're moving a big flying base where there's lots of equipment and lots of special.
You make up a good point there, Dick. That is interesting because you can't move Rucker.
Well, it would be very difficult.
You can't move Rucker, but you could actually.
I mean, it's a small college. It's a professional college. And so
I can see a Democratic administration moving that thing to
I can too.
California.
And that's why we don't, need another Democratic administration. And I think one reason the military is concerned is they're concerned about education in Montgomery.
Right.
Air Force families don't view Montgomery as a good place to be transferred to if they've got school-age children.
Right.
Now, the Board of Education is finally beginning to address those concerns, but they need to pick up their feet and run a little faster, because this is one of those, whatever it takes, the city and the congressional delegation are going to have to all pull together and get it done, because even as an ex-car dealer, I mean, if you pulled all the military business away from it would make a huge bite out of us.
I mean, it's a heck of a lot of business for that.
Especially on the import side. I mean, a lot of those pilots, they love gadgets, and so they like foreign, like Kias, and when we had Infinity, they like cars with lots of computer tech. And they're also take really good care of everything they own, which means, they do their maintenance on time. And I can't even imagine what our bottom line would have looked like if you took all the military business out. I mean, it would leave a big old hole.
See, the thing that's so beautiful about you running for this congressional seat is you have made your living here in Montgomery for 3 generations, and you realize how important that base is to Montgomery.
Well, and
not
only the base, but just everything that goes with it.
The people that come there.
Well, exactly. Montgomery's I hear people run down Montgomery all the time. I love Montgomery. I've always lived here. I raised my family here. I could have moved to Auburn and driven in like a lot of people do to run the car dealership in Montgomery. But, I like living in Montgomery. And Montgomery's got a lot to offer. And in spite of what the media tries to project, black people and white people know each other in Montgomery and get along for the most part. And those family connections matter.
They do.
And I think if we can, I don't think there's any reason that the military shouldn't increase their investment in Montgomery if we can put our best foot forward.
Right.
And also, we're also going to have to be very effectively represented, both in Washington and at the state level. But as a person who's run a business, things like, the media's running around saying, we got 9% inflation. No, we don't. If you're a business person, if you look at energy costs and even food costs, it's a lot higher than 9%. Just things like sugar, butter, potatoes. I mean, the food inflation rate's more like 20%. And it's killing families. And so we need someone in Congress who understands that the government needs to pull back its own spending and quit intentionally inflating energy prices. The reason the car business was slowing down about the time we sold, and it's slowed a little further now, and the reason food prices are going up is because it's being all driven by energy costs. I mean, that's what's made it so much more expensive to transport agricultural produce from the farm to wherever the market is for it. And the sad part is when this has all been done intentionally by our own government in the name of, protecting the planet. For District 2, I don't think they want someone who's going to protect the planet. I think they want someone who's going to protect the families that live in District 2.
Exactly.
And that's what I intend to do, and I hope everybody else in this race will take that attitude, because I don't know how much more regular people can stand paying the cost to for this climate change agenda. I mean, I'm not a scientist, but I tell you, if it's really as big a deal as the Biden administration and all these sacrifices they want us to make, why is it that our biggest trading partner, China, they burned more coal in 2022 than at any time since records were being kept? More than ever. So our competitors, mainly China and India, are burning more coal than ever while we're shutting down our fossil fuel power generating plants and running our energy costs up. They're driving theirs down. And it's just, you know, if it was as serious as the Biden administration wants us to believe it is, you would think that you'd hear them trying to do something about that. But they're not. You know, the government is, through this green energy, believe me, they are picking winners and losers. And, I mean, even in the car business, I'm telling you, the amount of money that's being thrown away on certain technologies that just aren't going to work is astonishing. I mean, it is. The government needs to let the market and let businessmen run their own businesses and quit trying to drive the market based on some political agenda. Because believe me, the market will reassert itself, and when it does, it won't be pretty.
That's a very good point. That's an excellent point. I think that I saw on a television show about that, how much the green thing is costing us. And the thing about it, it has no effect. If you're not going to get China and India to do the same thing we're doing, you're putting us at a disadvantage.
Since 2010, our greenhouse emissions have gone down about 30% in the United States, which would matter, except that during that same time period, China, their carbon emissions have gone up 200%.
Oh my God.
And because, you know, they're just, you know, they're buying coal at bargain basement low prices because Europe and the United States aren't burning anymore, mostly from Australia. And so they're being more competitive because they're driving their energy costs down, while Joe Biden, you know, first day on the job, closes Keystone, shuts down that, you know, you can't. And it's people around, you know, it's regular people that pay the cost for that when they go to buy eggs. You know, and it's just not right.
It's not. Well, folks, I hate to tell you, our time's up. It goes by in a hurry. Our guest tonight has been Dick Brewbaker, a former state senator from here in Montgomery and a lifetime resident of Montgomery and a candidate for the 2nd Congressional District, which is on the ballot March 5th. He's a Republican running for the 2nd District here in Montgomery on March the 5th, right around the corner, y'all. Thank y'all for watching. Hope you tune again next week. Thank you, Senator.
Yeah, Merry Christmas.
Same to you, buddy.
Good to see you.
Thank you.